Welcome to Health Systems CIO's interview with Ron Mehring, Chief Information Security Officer with Texas Health Resources. I'm Anthony Guerra, Founder and Editor-in-Chief. Ron, thanks for joining me.
Sure. Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, great. Looking forward to having a little fun chat with you, Ron. Tell me a little bit about your organization and your role.
Sure. I work for an organization, healthcare system called Texas Health Resources. We're a large healthcare system located in North Texas. We have roughly about 29,000 employees, about 29 hospitals, and over 300 points of entry into our health system. I've been with Texas Health for, a little bit over 12 years, I guess. And I serve as the Chief Information Security Officer and the Vice President of Technology Operations and Security. I have a bit of a blended role where I lead technology operations and traditional security for the health system.
I've heard sort of more of this, almost like a CISO CTO blending with the infrastructure in there. So I've definitely heard some of this as a trend. And a lot of times, you ask people, how should this work best from a governance point of view, reporting? And what you almost always hear people say is it really doesn't matter. It's just the people have to get along. It doesn't matter who reports to who or who's in which role. Everyone just has to get along and what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think you're dead on accurate. It is a cultural issue. You can, depending on how the culture is in the organization, security and technology functions as well as other functions in the enterprise there could be unintended conflict that arises out of that. So the whole idea is to kind of smooth that out a little bit and build. It helps build better relationships and better context of operations when you're trying to figure out what you should do first and what you should do last. What's priority A versus priority D, and when all this prioritization and all these costing and budgeting activities and things like that, it's all about choices. And so whether it's the budget side or the operations side, just getting work done, some of these things seem to smooth out. But once again, it does rely on the people, and the people have to agree in principle on how you're going to operate. And sometimes the traditional mold works, maybe a separation of duties, and some organizations, and there might be incentives to do that. But in other cases, it's better to be maybe more operationally focused, where you have more of a tighter blended relationship. Now, in the end, it is all about relationships and how people get along. That's how you protect the environment. It's a team sport. So there's no individuals in cybersecurity. It's about the team.
Yeah, I was thinking about, governance as you're talking. You mentioned the word choices, and, we can be the best at executing, but if we're not making the right choices about what to execute on, if that's getting screwed up somewhere along the line, then I guess the CEO or someone says, things aren't lining up. You're not lining up with my priorities or the board's priorities. These were the marching orders, but the specific projects where the resources are going isn't lining up. And I wonder, is that something that's really hard to get right? Do a lot of people get it wrong? I guess everybody can get it wrong here and there, but just your thoughts around governance done well and maybe governance done poorly, and where you think the risk lays in getting that wrong.
Yeah, I think the first step is, number one, the organization as a whole needs to recognize that there is governance over IT, and there's a lot of reasons to have that governance that go beyond, let's say, compliance or risk management requirements. It's about all those front-end choices, whether or not something should be done in the first place. And we have a really great IT governance shop that does a good job of triaging these issues as we intake them, and to help them repeat that back to the actual requesters, the people who want these new capabilities in the enterprise, to help them and inform them from, let's say, a technology or an application perspective, if those are good choices or not. And a lot of that might be based on pre-existing solutions that might be able to be extended out, or, you might need a new system, but that new system is going to integrate really well, or there might be a lot of friction in that integration. So our IT governance structure also includes a pretty deep architectural review board, dives in deep into these requests and evaluates these things on their merit on whether or not, from a technology standpoint, whether or not these things make sense or not. Of course, the business side of things, whether it's clinical or business operations in healthcare, are going to understand what it's going to do for them. But it helps tie things together a little bit and making sure that the choices being made by those folks that are going to be using the application every day or technology every day, that they have enough information beyond what they see in the workflow, that you understand, hey, if you're going to do this, that's great. We understand what you're trying to achieve, but underneath the hood, it might create a bunch of extra churn, extra cost, resource allocation. It might emanate new risks we haven't seen before, depending on how they want to operate. All those things are going to get triaged in a governance process, which helps inform the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And that's you need that really good positive feedback loop in these interactions. And once again, let's say people have to recognize there is a governance structure, otherwise it becomes weak and brittle. You get a lot of applications and technologies that kind of work their way past those things, and you end up dealing with those things somewhere along the life cycle because maybe they didn't integrate that well, or they're bringing in problems that are maybe creating new resourcing requirements. And again, anytime you divert resources from someone else to something else in the enterprise that was unexpected, you're probably taking it away from some other service that already existed. So that's really what it comes down to. Choice. You only have so many only so much IT staff. You only have so much budget for allocating new technologies and applications. It's not forever. It's not a bottomless pile of money. That's really what it comes down to. And it's the feedback loop. And going back to culture, it is a cultural issue. Everyone has to recognize that we're trying to manage this thing. Good stewardship, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to manage these things for the right reasons, for the betterment of the healthcare system, and of course, those we serve in the healthcare system, our communities. Good choices.
You mentioned which happens, something sort of sneaking in, and it gets past everything, right? Somehow this miraculous it managed to do it. How does that happen? And I know there's probably a number of ways to prevent. We call this shadow IT, right? Gray IT, things that snuck in. People sometimes have independent budgets that don't sort of go through central. They just put out a credit card or whatever. And they got something. Maybe it pops up on the network, and you'll go, "Oh, what is that? That's interesting." Obviously, they're supposed to do certain things. You mentioned the architectural review board. It's supposed to go there. Things are supposed to happen a certain way. How do we miss stuff sometimes? How does it slip through? And when something slips through, do you do sort of an analysis and say, that's where it got through, plug that hole?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Good thing at Texas Health is we have such a wonderful leadership population that recognizes the work of other groups and the needs of other groups, that it doesn't happen too often. But typically the way this might happen, definitely in a healthcare system, is you might have a large agreement that covers lots of different product types. Medical device manufacturers are a good example of that. We sign these very large agreements, and underneath that agreement, you might have products added to that larger services agreement. And some folks don't know that, well, we already have an agreement with them, so it's probably okay if I go ahead and add one more thing. And there's nothing nefarious or malicious about it. It's just looking at it for what it is, and not realizing that purchase might need an extra review step because of what actually is being brought in. So those things happen. I don't consider them purposely trying to bypass anything. It's more of a kind of an educational issue, but those things are hard to educate on sometimes. So lots of empathy of folks just trying to do the right thing. We do catch up with those things, and then we put them through a review process when we find them. And then we help folks we coach those folks and help them understand, hey, if you're going to add more to this agreement, you got to let us know. The next thing is a pre-existing solution that maybe they kind of what I was saying before. Maybe it's a modular type of solution. Cloud is a good example. This happens with cloud services a lot. You get a solution, you buy 2 modules, and they offer a third module, but you never implemented it, and it was never part of the initial scope, but you did purchase it. You just never did anything with that part of the application, and now you've added more to it. that would typically require another review to be done to ensure what you're doing is appropriate. This happens with on-premise applications occasionally as well, but typically it requires deeper interaction with the internal IT
Mm-hmm.
staff to make those things happen, so they're kind of caught.
Mm-hmm.
But those things happen. Once again, these aren't necessarily malicious in nature. It's just getting folks to understand major changes, major workload changes, things like that have to be communicated back in IT. And our IT shop, our application delivery areas and things like that, actively engage with kind of the business stewards to kind of try and discover those new features, new add-ons, new things that they want to do, new interfacing requirements with an application, moving data around, things like that, to ensure that we're all on the same sheet of music. And they maintain these kind of positive interactions. Our major application portfolios are a lot easier just because we have more people around those, and the change management practices on those things is a little bit tougher to get through. You can't really bypass those things, but maybe the smaller, lower tier applications might be a little bit easier for folks to add and delete from those environments, especially if they're cloud-based. But it's a risk equation, both from a technology risk and a security risk from my vantage point. So we try and catch them along the way. But it is, when we do see them, we do this kind of feedback loop and say, hey, for these type of changes, we need you to kind of enter this kind of queue, this governance queue, so we can take a gander at it. I get questions all the time saying, hey, does this need to go through a review? And I said, yes, you should move that. So the good thing is we do have folks in the company that are aware of these things, but you get new people and things like that. It takes a little time to coach people through that and understand when they trigger a governance request or not. Hopefully it answers the question.
Yeah, it does. I was just making myself laugh. I was thinking cloud, cloud and a credit card is the bane of every CISO's existence. Cloud and a credit card, right? They don't
Yeah,
have to,
it can be
call anybody. It sounds great.
nice thing, we have pretty rigid controls around all that stuff on
Uh-huh.
purchasing. The controls are fairly rigid.
Right.
At Texas Health, we have really great financial and supply chain folks that stay on top of those things quite a bit to make sure that folks can't go out there and just charge something. We don't have people running around with credit cards at Texas
Yeah.
Health.
Okay, that's good.
So we don't have that. So typically your traditional invoicing, purchase orders and invoicing is required, and that's going to get some type of view. That doesn't mean that we don't have challenges, especially within the distributed kind of varied set of assets we have in a healthcare system. Things can get a little complicated because the diversity of types of assets, whether it's IoT-based services, medical devices, and then you have different types of applications. You have the different modalities of access going on in technology that can be difficult to manage. So you have to set a line. You have to say, what am I going to worry about? What am I not going to worry about?
Right.
You have thousands and thousands of assets. It can be pretty daunting to try and manage every single thing in the enterprise. So you do have to set a line and say, hey, this is the level we're going to manage at.
Well, and that sounds like something you have to do in many areas of life for your sanity, for all of us, right? I mean,
Right.
we talk about, everyone talks about your job being a job of risk, managing risk, measuring risk, communicating risk. And that's what I think of when you talk about that line, right? There's lines in risk. What are we going to accept? What are we not going to accept? And you're not making the decision. You're communicating, right? You need to communicate to the business owner, the CEO, the board, whoever's going to make that decision. Here's what's going on. And it's always interesting to me how a CISO describes risk to a business person, how you translate security speak to business speak so you can get a valid answer. So you think the person you talked before about when the businesses are looking at applications, repeating back to them what you think you heard, right? Almost
That's
like,
right.
the relationship coaching. They say, if you're having trouble communicating, repeat back. This is what I heard you say. Is this what you said? So lots of stuff there. I'll let you jump in wherever you want.
Well, I would just say is you got a great point there. We're a high reliability organization. It's actually a real thing. There's principles with high reliability, and when you get into repeat backs, that's all part of that structure. And everyone at Texas Health is coached on and trained on high reliability principles, and it allows you to you're not oversimplifying things. You're focused on resiliency of the enterprise. You're deferring to expertise. It's all these principles of high reliability that really make these models work. You can't really skip over those steps. If you skip over those steps, you end up with a lot of friction. If you can build in the front end and the culture of these principles, I have found that the communication improves, and we have really great promise. We call it our promise. It's our culture, the way we treat each other, respect, integrity, compassion, and excellence. The way we talk to each other, the way we try and understand each other, our empathetic nature of understanding that everybody has a job to do and they're just trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, which is our communities that we serve. It might be in a different vibe than some other companies that might have different incentives, although I do believe they're customer oriented and things like that, but the incentives might be a little bit different. So it is incentives, and it comes from the top down and of course the bottom up. Everybody's got to kind of live that. That's what makes these kind of very complicated and what could feel be onerous processes really work. It's like, why do I have to do all this for one little thing? And patience kind of kicks in, and understanding that there's a reason why we're doing this. And just to pull on that a little bit, you can't just do things for the sake of doing it. You have to show results at some point and say, this is the reason why we're doing it. And these are the things that we accomplish. Our CIO does a great job of explaining by doing this work, this extra administrative work. It's easing the burden and the pain underneath the hood, where folks are working heads down every day, just trying to support the customer base, our consumers, maintaining systems and those things that go on every day, that, the plumbing every day. It eases the burden there, because it's taking away a lot of if you had a lot of single point interactions, it could be really burdensome for a lot of different teams. So it kind of alleviates that, pulls it away from, creates an abstraction layer that folks can interact with it. Doesn't matter if you're a security professional, a technology and application person, or even working outside of the core IT structure, working in our data analytics areas, or working inside of our marketing or finance areas. They kind of understand the why behind it, and you're telling them back, you're kind of giving them a feedback loop and saying, yes, it's burdensome, but look at the opportunities that are being created by underneath the hood. We're actually able to accomplish more at scale when you kind of create these structures in a meaningful way. You shouldn't create administrative burden for the sake of creating it. It should have meaning and purpose. But that's what I think the key there. It does go back to when we first talked about culture, but there are benefits to all of this if done well.
So you use the term a high reliability organization, and I'm not that familiar with that, but it sounds like these are principles about communicating values. There are values in there. It sounds very interesting. And a lot of times when you hear that stuff, the people have to walk around with a little laminated card in their pocket, and you go, you know what? These are our values, and they're really high level, and they're not really impactful to me. But it sounds like what you're talking about is actually informing a lot of the way you're conducting yourself, and I assume others, and it creates that culture.
That's right.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah, we don't have folks walking around with laminate cards. Not that that hasn't happened in the past occasionally. We do have that. Some of the principles, some of the things that you might do underneath the hood, they might have a little cheat list for themselves. But the structure of high reliability, we put it in many years. Since, by the way, in healthcare delivery, it's very popular. There's many healthcare systems that operate under as a high reliability organization, and they'll be, they'll be able to say basically the same things I'm saying. And this works at both the point of care when clinicians are taking care of patients. They're using these high reliability principles, all the way to our back shop areas and our finance and IT and HR areas. The way we communicate, and sometimes it's the simplest things, and things like the way we communicate decisions. We use what's called, which many organizations do something similar. They have a standard template we use for communicating or requesting a decision, essentially, or expressing a problem, and it's called an SBAR. It's situation, background, assessment, and recommendation. Not uncommon.
I've heard
But
that.
no matter
Yeah.
where you go in the enterprise, you can see people doing these things, and it provides a structured way to communicate, right?
Mhm.
That way it's not some free form email with people kind of talking through a problem, kind of in a, it's all, you get an email, you get a request, and they can kind of come in a lot of different ways with
Yeah.
the way the person feels about the problem in many ways. This gives a logical structure to work through to say, here are the four things I need to go through to explain this problem properly and develop a kind of an appropriate, what I believe the recommendation to be. Those very simple things, if not done right, can actually create a lot of downstream problems, because immediately you find out you had communication problems. It
Uh-huh.
helps build the front end to the communication path.
Right.
But it's also the other principles as well inside of high reliability. One of my favorite is deference to expertise. And that just let the subject matter experts do what subject matter experts do. Don't get in their way. Listen to them, let them provide the right feedback. You're probably going to solve problems a heck of a lot easier. That means it's not a chain of command. It's not going, oh, I have a bunch of directors that report to me. They must be that's where I'm going to go to my deference of expertise. Nope. We go all the way down to the engineering or the analyst level to find out exactly what's going on, and because that chain of command can create its own set of problems, right? An own set of biases and things like that, because the way things work, it's a human nature thing. So deference to expertise in practice, is not an easy thing to accomplish, and you have to build that all the way on the front end. So number one, you got to recruit the right people, okay? With the right frame of mind, the ability to consume these cultural behaviors that we expect. So you got to recruit well. And then when they're in, you've got to live it. You can't just treat it as a kind of a, I'm going to put it on the end of my signature line in the email. It can't be that way. Or a laminate card. You've got to kind of show it every day. And what it does, it builds up where people are not afraid to say something. Okay. They feel like that they're part of the solution. Their input is truly valued. And we can see that all the way from the CEO on down. The CEO goes right to the people that can answer questions. Okay. He knows that he understands the hierarchy and the organizational chart better than anyone, more than likely. And it starts from the CEO on down. And then once again, it goes from the bottom up, from the lowest level employee in the organization understands these principles at their base level and can apply those. And that's really where things begin to work. So it's really, you've got to live it every day. If you don't, these things could become more of a byline or
Yeah.
just kind
Laminated
of
card.
some things that we say we do on a website, but you got to live it.
It sounds like you really embrace this philosophy and it works for you, and you like the effects of this in the workplace. Is that accurate?
Oh, it does. Very much so. My primary role and the work I do primarily every day is serve as a CISO. I have other duties, but I serve as a CISO. A cybersecurity program is not effective without these principles, plain and simple. You can go to worked in different organizations, and you can see the constraints, the friction, the issues that arise when from those companies where they're having difficulty getting adoption or getting folks to kind of carry forward with the plan. You can kind of see these things emanate because they're not really applying these kind of more holistic principles within the organization. And you don't have to call it reliability. It's, just you can call it other things. The big thing is just realizing that definitely on the cybersecurity side, that look, this is a team sport. The only way you can get everybody involved is everyone's got to see and feel that problem statement and feel like they have influence in there. And listening is important and all those things. One of my other favorite ones is basically it's summarized. It's don't oversimplify. So building structures where you're not sitting at kind of this very high level of evaluating a problem, is actually listening to the signals and actually what is happening in the environment. And you could apply this to technology as well. Sensing that these small events, these small issues could become bigger issues. And you can't do that just by telling people to do it. You kind of actually have to have structure and rhythm around sensing these small events, these small signals in the environment to say, hey, is this a bigger problem or not? And that's, once again, you involve your subject matter experts and your deference to expertise, and you get good dialogue and conversation going on what's appropriate to do next in those steps. So just some examples of how to apply it and how we've applied it at Texas Health. It works. And yes, I love working in an environment that provides that type of culture, because it makes things a heck of a lot easier. And by the way, more enjoyable every day.
Very good. So you mentioned that you have to model it yourself, and in order for it to be real and sustained, you have to address it where you do not see it applied by those who are under you, so to speak, report to you and whatnot. Can you give me an example of how that might happen? Perhaps something you might see that you would say, this is not exempt, this is not working with the values we're supposed to be espousing. I'm going to coach. This is a coaching moment. This is a teachable moment. Does that,
Yeah,
I assume that comes up.
it does. You might have folks that it's not like we're conflict free. It's not that we're constraint free. There's going to be roadblocks the way, and that can frustrate people.
Mhm.
The big thing about that is if folks are not living with their values, I wouldn't necessarily call it, it's kind of a coaching moment, but it's more about drawing them back in
Uh-huh.
to the actual behavior itself. And that comes down to appropriate questioning techniques, appropriate, hey, what are you really thinking here? Explain this, and let them kind of, the individual, lay it all out and express themselves, their voice. I find that helps get people into the right frame of mind. You can get into people could be really burdened that week. They're really busy.
Mhm.
And sometimes these things are not top of mind. It happens. People are heads down, working really hard, trying to do the right thing. And sometimes you just have to slow down the conversation a little bit and make sure everybody synchronizes back to what is the proposed problem statement, if it even exists, because it might not actually be an appropriate problem statement yet, right?
Mm.
The problem may have not been fully identified. It just feels like a problem.
Right.
So you have to walk people through, and that could be creating this frustration. That could be creating folks that might be acting not within our cultural structure. And you just have to say, that's just not kind of the way we work here. I believe in being honest with folks when you need to be, very well, always honest with folks, but to be more, I said, in the delivery of that message, to make sure that it's more of a fluid conversation and a back and forth, and not just you're doing it wrong. Because you got to get that adoption back. So it does happen occasionally, but the key is to pull on the thread a little bit more. And we get,
Mhm.
and especially in the cybersecurity space, they're all complicated projects. You're going to interact
Mhm.
with different systems. Folks might not understand how that interaction will work. So you've got to bring people into the problem statement and solution together. I find that works pretty well. And we run across those issues, very complex projects, some of the most complex I've ever worked on. And you're trying to get folks to see things a little bit differently, but then stay within our high reliability kind of promise behavior model, making sure we're applying those to every meeting and every interaction. If things aren't going well, sometimes it's best just to say stop. I always say,
Mhm.
hang on a minute, we're going to stop right here and let's talk about this and backtrack. And sometimes you have to go back a little ways and go back to the original problem statement or the original issue and say, let's start over again and try this again. And you have to be patient with these things. Everyone's a human and they have their own perspective and view of the world, and you've got to recognize that. So we don't have like some kind of draconian you shall, right? Promise delivery here, promise culture. It's just kind of expected that you kind of live this every day with the understanding that no one's going to be perfect every day, and you have to recognize it.
And you mentioned the importance of hiring. I would imagine if this is the kind of organization we want to have, these are the things we believe, we're going to really try and do our best to make sure before we bring someone in the organization, they are open to these things, they embrace these things, because you don't want the kind of person to come in that this is completely foreign to anything they're interested in doing, and it's just not going to work.
That's true. There's some really bright and skilled people in the kind of marketplace of people.
of
It
cyber,
doesn't mean they're a good
especially.
fit. Yeah,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean they're a great
Yeah.
fit. Okay, so it really comes down to that initial recruiting and engagement that the recruiters do, and then the subsequent interviews of the supervisor, the hiring manager, to ensure that when they're asking these questions, they're soliciting responses that meet our needs, that they're going to be a good fit, that they're going to get along with what we're trying to do at Texas Health. So, and we have training for our hiring managers. We've done that in the past to ensure that we're evaluating all of our candidates in the correct way, the way we believe they should be evaluated, so they'll be a good fit across all the guidelines you would expect in a recruiting process, recognizing not only the skills of the individual, but recognizing that everyone's different, diversity does count, all those things matter in the structure, making sure the recruiting population pool is appropriate and that we're gathering the right candidates into the pool with the right population. Those things are all done on the front end, but they set up the hire of a great employee.
Yeah, it makes me think, I'm not going to keep you too much longer. It makes me think of the importance of the relationship between the business and the business units and HR. I've worked in different places where it felt like there was a bit of a disconnect between HR and the units, meaning it just wasn't that a partnership that you'd want. You'd get candidates and resumes that were not even close to what you were looking for. It just didn't feel like well ingrained. But what you're talking about, and I think the ideal state would be for HR to really understand the culture, the people, not just the skills, but also the skills, but for them to really, really get it, a meeting of the minds with the business.
That's right. It's really important to have a good relationship with the different parts of HR that make that successful. At Texas Health, which is awesome, within IT, we're a fairly large department. We're 700 people, significantly large, a good size IT department. So we have a dedicated, well, I think she covers a few other areas, but a dedicated HR uh, uh, individual who helps guide us through this structure. And if things aren't necessarily working well in the queue, in the recruiting queues, she helps with that, with the recruiter. She helps bridge those relationships. Now, the hiring managers are working directly with our recruiting managers and for the candidate population and making sure we have good job requisitions and all that stuff out there. Occasionally, you do have candidates that pop in that fall below the mark and just probably maybe should not have ended up in that queue, maybe. But the key is to have a good relationship with the recruiter and say, look, I don't mind if you put these type of candidates in the queue, I will review them. Or I want you to go ahead and stop these type of candidates with these. If they don't have these skills, I don't want to see them. And that's that
Right.
communication up in front with the recruiter saying, this is what I need and what I expect to kind of land in my queue.
Right. Yeah, definitely. You don't want you don't want to be wasting your time. You don't want to be sitting there
Right.
interviewing people that, for one of many reasons, are completely, within 5 seconds, you say, this isn't going to work out. Now I've got to kind of pretend to finish this interview so I'm not rude. Anyway,
Yeah,
right?
and I always say when I tell I've told hiring managers this in the past. I says, when you're recruiting somebody, remember that's maybe day to day for you, but that's an important part of that person's life that you're recruiting.
Yeah.
So go in
Yep.
that with that headspace. And I'm not saying all candidates might have that attitude. They might be doing 100 different interviews and it's just one more for them.
Hmm.
But treat it as this candidate has taken the time to say, hey, you know what? I kind of like to work at Texas Health, and that they're taking time out of their schedule to interview and try and become part of this great team that we have here. So as I go in there with that kind of attitude and realize that it's that this person is taking part of their day out and they want to be part of our team, regardless, and the qualifications set aside, just take that very human characteristic of realizing this is a human being on the other side. It's not just interviewing somebody like a check in the box for the day. Treat it for what it is. That's another human being that wants a job.
You sound like a very pleasant person to work for, Ron. I might send in an application after this call. Final
It varies
question.
day to day, by the way. You have to catch me on
Okay.
the right day.
I caught you on a good day. Final question, then I'll let you go. 12 years, certainly probably about 3 times longer than the average CISO tenure, um, give or take, but lots of experience there, one place. Your
Mhm.
best piece of advice to others in the role, many of whom will have, again, about 1/3 or 1/4 of the time on the job, your best piece of advice for them?
Uh, for CISOs,
Yes, for CISOs.
stick with the company.
Yep.
There will be ups and downs,
Oh,
but regardless of how you might feel you're being treated, you still have a job to do and do it the best you possibly can, and understand that not everything that one day, that may be that 1 week or that one day or that 1 month, which may have been a bad week or month, is going to be the worst month. Okay. And that, in other words, things can get better. Okay. Stick with the company, understand you're there for a reason, and just stick with it, because most cybersecurity programs, I'm talking from a cyber perspective
mm-hmm.
here, are not a 1, 2, or a 3-year body of work. They are to be very honest, from my vantage point, they're a 5 to 10-year body of work.
Wow.
And you have to think in long range terms about how I'm going to help this organization out that hired me and I wanted to be a part of. Now, sometimes bad things happen. Sometimes relationship issues occur, and maybe it's not appropriate to stick with the company. But if you can, stick with them, because it's going to help you and your program, and it's going to help the company out. So I found that that works. So that's my biggest thing, is stick with the company and be there. Be honest with your leaders about the real posture of your company, the real challenges. Don't sugarcoat things. Be honest, be respectful, all those things, and say exactly where they are, and get them to and get those folks to understand what risks they're consuming by maybe doing something or not doing something in the enterprise. That's our job, and it's a hard job. And realize, if you signed up to make, like, all of a sudden things were going to be magically easy, you are absolutely wrong. It's a tough job to do, like other jobs in large companies, but you're not the only one with challenges. Stick with them, and you'll make it better for the company and the consumers or customers that they serve.
I don't know, Ron. Stick with it. Finish the job. Sounds like you're Marine coming out. Your inner Marine.
That's right. 21 years ago, I stuck with it.
Well, yeah. For those who don't know, you were in the Marines for 21 years. So thank you for your service. And that's it. Stick with it. Finish the mission. Right.
That's right.
All right, Ron. Thanks so much for your time today.
You bet. Great. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate you. Have a great one.